Hello everyone, glad to see you for this new video. So, today we're going to look at 3 pieces of military origin equipment that you can easily get from military surplus. And we'll see that these items really offer unbeatable value for money. So these are 3 pieces of equipment that I use regularly and that I've tested, especially for bivouacs. So, I'm going to show them to you and we'll look at their most interesting features. And for the last item, which is a bit special, I'll focus on one of the interesting ways to use it that's suitable for survival situations. So you can find all this equipment secondhand at physical military surplus stores, of course. That's the subject of the video, but there are also online surplus stores. And you also have the various secondhand equipment sales websites that everyone knows, which can be interesting. So depending on where you live, your possibilities, your opportunities, don't hold yourself back. If you're interested in this kind of equipment, do your research in all directions. So let's start now with the first piece of equipment, one of the most important pieces, of course, since we're talking about shoes. The equivalent of combat boots, in a way, since we're in the military world. So I chose Mendel, a German brand which is still widely used in the French army, even though there are many different models and brands nowadays. These are shoes that I tend to use all year round, so they have plenty of qualities, but also a few flaws. We'll see about that. Here, this is the most common model, the Desert Defense, so it's considered a summer model. These are very breathable shoes, but they also hold up very well during our winters. In France, we'll see it. They're not waterproof. They'll only be waterproof in puddles up to 4 or 5 centimeters deep at most. So, that's one of the reasons why we'll also prefer them for summer. So they're good walking shoes for sandy terrain, on trails, on rolling ground. So their main quality is that they're really very sturdy and resistant to all environments, even the toughest ones. Generally, if you really get them wet, you'll get soaked very quickly, from the front, here, at the tongue, on the front of the foot. It's a high-top model, so they're quite tall. So it's interesting because it really helps prevent any sprain problems in most cases. In the forest, the high top is also very useful because it generally allows you to really protect yourself. So, a few drawbacks though. They're still quite heavy, about 800 grams per shoe, so you really end up with a military-style shoe, which I find really lacks flexibility. In addition, the problem is made worse by the fact that the heels are also a bit high for my taste, and when it comes to support, it's not always optimal. So, it'll be difficult to move quickly. These aren't made for running. You won't be anywhere near 100% of your abilities when running. That's normal. They're not made for that. So, for me, that's the main drawback. Let's say they're a bit stiff. This is a brand new model. The laces are original, and I really recommend for our activities replacing them with something sturdier, like paracord, for example. Unbeatable value for money, brand new, in store for around 200 euros. Military surplus stores often sell them for around 100 euros, half price. On classified ad websites, you'll easily find them for 60 to 70 euros brand new in the box. And secondhand, in very good condition, often around 20 euros. So, which makes them, for indestructible or almost indestructible shoes, a really cheap product. Shoes that I therefore recommend having in stock, and that could be useful in certain situations. Second piece of equipment, the now famous Bundeswehr German Army bag. So, it's a bag with a capacity of 65 liters, which will be a very good bag for 72 hours, for example. Once again, we're dealing with military equipment that's sturdy and inexpensive. Flecktarn camouflage for this German camouflage bag, which is a good autumn camouflage, but also works well in our forests. Overall, from Central Europe, the bag's exceptional capacity-to-weight ratio is going to be interesting. It's really a unique feature of this bag. It holds 65 liters for 1.4 kg, which is rare. So you'll also be able to compress it a lot as long as you're not overpacking, so that it stays compact and comfortable to carry. So you won't have a bag that looks empty if you load it to 2/3 or half of its capacity. Like here, you'll have a bag that looks more like a compact assault pack, not bulky. On the other hand, you can also load it, obviously to the max, through the main compartment, even filling up the chimney. So this design of the bag makes it a very versatile bag, which in our activity can be really very interesting. Personally, I really like simple streamlined bags. Here we're going to have a tunnel bag with a central compartment with variable geometry, thanks to the chimney. When you open it, it can actually become quite spacious if you want. A lower compartment, both are connected. We'll have a pouch on the left, a pouch on the right, and a pouch on top. These pouches are quite spacious, and the one on top is very useful when camping. So at this level at the back, it's also very accessible. Let's call it the administrative compartment. Very interesting because it's very accessible. Waterproof. We're also going to have, which I really appreciate on this bag, 2 straps here. So we'll be able to strap on an axe, machete, large knife, tripod, whatever you can imagine. Even though it's basically a military bag, so it's made to strap on a long weapon. There are a lot of reproductions of these bags, and the quality varies quite a bit. Most of the time, or often, you won't have this little pouch here, which is still pretty important for securing the items you're going to put in there, so be careful. The 2 compartments are also not always connected to each other on some replicas. These small differences aren't always negligible and should be considered when buying. So these bags have an inner lining here, which makes them relatively waterproof, almost waterproof. But in really rainy conditions, it's always better anyway to use a rain cover for your bag, which weighs almost nothing. In the forest, it will let you slide through the vegetation. It will help you avoid getting snagged, so keep that in mind. Now, a small downside to these bags, but it's something that can be easily fixed. The straps are particularly long and bothersome, so you'll really need to secure them every time. Either with tape, duct tape, elastic bands, whatever you have. One interesting thing about these bags now is that they're very flexible to begin with. Very light, but also very flexible. So it will be more comfortable to carry if you add the German Army mattress inside, which is made for it and which goes at the back at this level. They're usually not sold with it, but we'll see how it's made. For those who don't know, you have a specific compartment for this mattress at the back in the main compartment. So the standard mattress that we often know from the German Army, which costs a few euros, so we'll see that it's very practical, but still. This well-known mattress is insufficient for sleeping in winter because it has an R value that I imagine is very low. So the thermal insulation will be minimal, yet it's a key element in winter. This mattress is practical for survival situations, for sitting, kneeling, for storing wood that you'll prepare to make a fire, for example. So it's thin, waterproof, it doesn't soak up water. Small problem, most of the possible and interesting uses for this mat will happen during the day. And you'll have to systematically empty your bag by 80% to put it back in its compartment. So that's one of its flaws, but the bag mat combo is still interesting. Coming back to the bag itself, we're at the minimum in terms of comfort, but there is still some padding here. We have load lifter straps. We obviously have a waist strap here, so everything is there. It's still decent, ergonomic, but once you get to 15 kilo to load, it's a bag you really start to feel. On the other hand, it doesn't squeak, and that's very interesting in terms of durability. So inside, there's a small aluminum tube that helps maintain the structure, and it will eventually serve as a blowpipe for us to stoke a fire, for example. And it's not such a gimmick. We were talking about it recently with the trainees. Sometimes, in certain cases, it can be useful. So the replicas here, like this one that I have inside, as I told you, we're going to find them in different qualities. And for a few euros, for 25 or around 30 euros brand new. So on this model, the fabric is even more robust, even more waterproof. It really looks like a polyvinyl chloride coating on this model. So that's a positive point. On the other hand, right from the first outing, the bag got a little roughed up. So it was a 3-day trip. Quickly, a strap gave out. At the seams, there's also the top pouch. Very useful. We talked about it. It also started to come apart a little bit. So the equipment is still of much lower quality. I think it's still better to focus on the original model. Coming back to the original bag, I've used it often. No snagging issues, no tearing issues, no stitching issues, nothing to report. So much sturdier material. I bought this one secondhand for about 60 euros. In physical stores, you can still find it between 60 and 80 for original versions, regularly. Secondhand, of course. So it's equipment that you'll find very easily in its original version, especially on German online sites. Between 50 and 60 euros. So it's sturdy equipment, robust, very good value for money. I recommend it. Last item now, the French Army sleeping bag cover. So this is the standard issue cover that's still in service. It's in camouflage. Classic Central Europe, the before common era. So it's a protective item that can be used in different ways depending on the temperature range you're in. And we'll see together how to use it in the spring with the current temperatures. So regarding the material, the Sursac is a fairly thick Gore-Tex. Once unfolded, the Sursac is about 2.20 meters, 2.30 meters long, and 82 centimeters wide. So we have a closing system with a zipper and Velcro with sealed seams and large flaps. So that makes it a good protective element. Normally, it's used over the sleeping bag, and it will add 5 degrees of extra comfort to your usual system. So in winter, it won't replace a good mattress, which will provide thermal insulation. Once again, which will stop conduction. On the other hand, you will avoid all convection problems, meaning all issues with drafts as well as humidity problems, since it is almost airtight. In many situations, this will spare us from having to use a tarp or any additional cover. When we have light rain, drizzle, or even morning dew. However, under really heavy rain around the zipper area, at that point, generally, you will still have some leaks if you're really under heavy rain. So you also have the hood, which allows you to store it to make it something pretty compact, as we saw at the beginning. And you can also store clothes in it, or even rain gear. That's what we often do. At night, it will make a pillow that stays in place, which is pretty convenient. It provides better comfort for the night. You're using Gore-Tex, which is a waterproof and breathable material. Most of the time, this will prevent interior condensation during the night. I've mentioned that the bivy sack is versatile and can be used in many ways. Now we're going to look at a way that could be useful to us in a survival situation, in stealth mode, in an emergency situation, for example, where our sleep could potentially be compromised, or even when using polyphasic sleep. Let's take the current situation as an example. Right now, the temperatures are rising. And we can expect temperatures above 10 degrees, but well below 20 degrees at the coldest point of the night. In this situation, the overbag will be useful to us if the temperatures drop towards 10 degrees, with only your gear, clothes, and basic equipment. If you need to rest, to sleep a little, you will very quickly be woken up, and you will be in discomfort that will prevent you from recovering in the particular situation of an evacuation. In a hostile area, or even in a somewhat ambiguous area, we try to rest for 1, 2, or even 6 hours when things are going well. But we will need to be reactive in order to clear out pretty quickly, I would say. So we will have to stay dressed and keep our shoes on. So there won't be any other option. So We'll just get into the bivy sack, sit against our backpack against a tree, for example, and try to rest like that. If there's heavy rain, you'll just have to cover yourself roughly with a poncho or a tarp. So, it will also be important to put something under your butt that will serve as thermal insulation. Once again. So, it will greatly increase your comfort, even if you're at about 10 degrees temperature. In this sleeping mode, you can use any small piece of clothing or small mattress and put it inside the bivy sack to manage this thermal insulation. Also, 2 things to remember about the feet. An important area of the body during the night. Also, if possible, you should change your socks for very dry ones. And secondly, you should partially loosen your shoelaces in order to have better blood circulation and more comfort. However, your shoes should still stay on with this partial loosening so that you can take them off quickly at night in an emergency and walk if needed. Now, here's how you get into the bivy sack. When you use this sleeping method, you get in from the end, usually not quite like you would with a sleeping bag. So depending on your gear, you can also bring in some equipment with you that would be better off sheltered. Depending on the situation, you may need to set up a few extra details. But here you have the basics of the first sleeping method. With Sursac, there you go, there are 2 models of Sursac that are almost identical. So, the older models like this one, with the khaki green military strap, and the slightly newer models, with a somewhat plasticized strap, the before common era strap, the standard camouflage. So the older models are made of a slightly lighter Gore-Tex, more flexible, but they are also a bit lighter. The difference between 1 kilo 2.3 and 1 kilo 4 is about 100 grams. But basically these bivy sacks are made in the same way. Both models are in very good condition. A bivy sack still packaged costs 30-50 euros max on classic second-hand sales sites, so often a bit more expensive. In military surplus, that's normal. So it's really quality gear. Multiple modes, different sleeping combinations for the price. That's where you find the second-hand deals. Right now, I recommend finishing up and to change the subject. As for the survival school, the winter courses are now over, and it's time for the summer courses. So I'm only leading 6 summer courses this year, and some of them are already partly full. The courses will start in June 2025, starting in June. So I sincerely thank all the trainees who made the trip, as well as all the trainees who are already registered for the upcoming courses. While waiting to meet you in the field, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon in a future video.